Welcome to my podcast. I already forgot what I named it, so we're off to a great start. Um, I'm going to be talking about the Lake Peigneur incident in 1980, and it was a small lake that was in Jefferson Island near the Vermilion Bay in Louisiana. And on November 20th, 1980, an oil drilling accident caused the entire contents of the lake to be swallowed in a massive whirlpool, and it completely changed the lake and the shorelines and the ecosystem surrounding. Before the incident, the lake was relatively small. It was only 10 acres with a maximum depth of 10 feet, and it had a freshwater ecosystem. And there was salt mining dating back to the 1900s on the lake, and that's kind of where the story starts. Uh, and Lake Peigneur was home to the northernmost of Louisiana's five salt domes, named as the Five Islands. And while there was 180 in Louisiana, the five that were along the coast tower served as the landmarks for Louisiana. In 1910, a man named John Mayles purchased the property in Jefferson Island for hunting. And in 1919, he began mining the property commercially for salt and later sulfur. And his son, John Bales Jr., named Jack, had the mine passed down to him. But Jack was much more interested in horticulture, founding the Live Oak Gardens, which will be very relevant to the story later. And he created the Live Oak Foundation. The Live Oak Garden incorporated tropical imports and was regarded as an immensely beautiful garden. Jack later sold his mine in 1956 to the Diamond Salt Company. Uh, Interestingly, when salt mines get hollowed out, oil begins to pool in cavities in extractable quantities. And in Louisiana, oil became a very big business. Louisiana's oil history began in 1901 with the first oil well near the town of Jennings in southwestern Louisiana. Oil fields in northern Louisiana helped boom the early decades of the 1900s in the oil development. Standard Oil owned a pipeline in Baton Rouge, the largest one in the state, and most of the northern fields became played out rather early. Once the northern oil fields began to become cleared out, seismic technology being development helped, change to marine-related equipment. And the oil companies directed their focus to the southern salt domes in the bottom of the state where our story takes place. By the 1920s, Louisiana oil shifted to coastal operations. And by the 30s, the oil industry has advanced along the coastal plain at a very dramatic pace. After World War II, a lot of it shifted even further off the coast, and by the end of the 70s, the industry had built thousands of platforms and miles of pipelines offshore. As the business expanded, they began land bids on and offshore in Louisiana, and the Texaco Oil Company won the bid on State Lease 124, and that included the areas under Lake Peigneur. The company then subcontracted the Wilson Brothers Corporation to drill a well from a floating barge, even though extensive salt mining operations occurred under the lake. At some point along the line, while they had contact with the Corps of Engineers and Diamond Crystal, communication broke down, leading to the incident. Texaco was aware of the salt mines in the area and contracted the Corps of Engineers, which talked to Diamond Crystal, but something happened along the way. And on November 20th, 1980, operations continued as normal, but the drill became stuck at a shallow depth of 1,230 feet. As the rig began to tilt slightly, nobody was concerned, but as time elapsed, the rig began to tilt at an alarming amount as they tried to unstick the drill. The workers decided something was very wrong and evacuated before a sinkhole formed under the rig. Soon after workers evacuated, the rig overturned and disappeared into the lake. A whirlpool, a quarter mile in size, formed within, and it sucked in barges, land, and a house. along with a tug from a canal, 40 acres of Jefferson Island, a house, a trailer, and some boats. The lake had held 3.5 billion gallons of water and it all disappeared. The drill had stuck into one of the domes of the salt mine, causing all the water to rush in. The mine had been operating since 1920, and they began excavating salt from increasingly deep shafts. Pillars of salt were left to support the 80-foot high roofs of the shafts, which were as wide as four-lane highways. Texaco had accidentally drilled into one of those shafts. Fortunately, by some miracle, the 50 miners who were in the lower levels of the mine were able to evacuate safety while water poured in. As the whirlpool began to grow, it caused the land nearby, including part of the island, to slide into the lake. The water entered the mine with so much force that it caused a geyser of compressed air, water, and salt to be launched 400 feet into the air out of the mine. And the geyser began to spew for several hours until the lake was completely drained. Once the lake began to empty, or was completely emptied, the Delcamber Canal, a man made river that leads from Lake Peigneur to the Vermilion Bay and eventually to the Gulf of Mexico, started to flow backwards. The backflow temporarily created a 164-foot waterfall, the largest waterfall in Louisiana history. It is also the only time in recorded history that the Gulf of Mexico flowed into the continental United States. Following the incident, the Texaco Oil Company accused Diamond Salt of keeping its mining operations a secret, while Diamond insisted Texaco and their subcontractors Wilson Brothers Corporation incorrectly triangulated the position of their drilling operation. The Live Oak Foundation, founded by Jack Bales, sued both companies for permanently damaging live oak gardens as over 65 acres of lakeside real estate was swallowed. In an out-of-court settlement, Texaco and the rig operator paid Diamond Crystal an estimated $45 million. Texaco also paid Live Oak Gardens on Jefferson Island another $12.8 million for damages. The mine was closed, and Diamond Crystal soon got out of the salt business and is now used for storing petroleum. There are more stories from the people that were witness to the incident. The first witness within the mine was by a guy named Junius Gaddison, and he was an electrician at the 1,300-foot level of the dome. He heard popping sounds and loud and empty barrels jostling in the incoming water, banging at the walls of the mine. He sounded the alarm. Many of the 50 miners working that morning began to run at the 1,500-foot level as they saw the evacuation signal and began to run to the 1,300-foot level where they could catch an elevator to the surface. However, when they reached the third floor, they were blocked by deep water. As most of the miners headed for the surface, a maintenance foreman named Randy LaSalle drove around to the remote areas of the mine which hadn't seen the evacuation signal and warned the miners there to evacuate. The miners whose escape was slowed by water on the third level used minecarts and diesel-powered vehicles to make their way up to the 1,300-foot level, where they waited their turn to ride the slow 8-person elevator to the surface as the mine below them filled with water. Although it seemed to take forever to get out, all 50 miners managed to escape. While everything was happening, Leonce Viator Jr. and his nephew were on the lake fishing for catfish in his 14-foot boat, oblivious to the drama below. He saw an eye in the ground about 100 feet in diameter with barges looped to it. He gunned it, reaching shore just in time to lash the boat to a tree and jump to shore. The last thing he saw as he looked back was the boat and tree disappearing into the vortex. He said he stared in amazement as 65 acres of woodland, including 150 feet pelican trees and century-old oaks, shudder and snap in sinking into the angry water. Boats, greenhouses, and fully loaded flatbed trucks were pulled under. The massive 2-story home of Jefferson Isler's then owner, Jack Bales, newly constructed by Richard, slipped 30 feet into the water. The house left by its 3-story chimney as the only evidence left of the showplace. The 18,000 square foot conservatory behind his home, the Live Oak Gardens, had some 300 exotic plant species from around the world that were also destroyed. Once the mine was completely filled with water, the barges that were sucked down underwater began to float up like bobbers on top of the lake. The violence of the incident made it difficult for experts to try to analyze what happened at the mine. All of the oil drilling barges and the mine were destroyed and collapsed in the incident. They also couldn't calculate the exact location of the borehole because of the massive sinkhole that surrounded it, completely destroying the original hole. There are two big theories for what happened. The first theory blames Texaco for miscalculating their drilling area and drilling directly into the salt mine, causing the salt mine to fill up. The second theory places the blame on the Diamond Crystal Salt Company, saying that the salt mine maps could have been vastly outdated, allowing some shafts to extend out further than originally expected, presuming Texaco drilled exactly where they intended to. While the Live Oak Gardens were destroyed, the Rip Van Winkle Gardens near had survived. Actor Joseph Jefferson toured the world performing his most famous role, Rip Van Winkle, and on his property in 1870, on Iberia Parish, he built a mansion complete with a 4-story cupola. On the property, he also built 15 acres of semi-tropical gardens that include irises, magnolias, carmesias, azaleas, hibiscus, and springtime bulbs. Mike Richard, the president of Live Oak Gardens, purchased the Rip Van Winkle Gardens in 2003. To save the Rip Van Winkle Gardens, Richard constructed 4 ponds, each at different elevations and consisting of different habitats. Water moves from pond to pond to aerate and eliminate iron carbonate. From the 4th and deepest pond, the water returns to the nursery. He also built a rookery between the 2 of the ponds, and today it holds great egrets, roseate spoonbills, and great American herons. Interestingly enough, the incident unearthed a mastodon at the lake. Richard Jr. and his father soon found remnants of a jawbone, a tusk, and teeth. Eventually, they uncovered 2 mastodons. Richard Jr. later attended school for paleontology, and now he manages Live Oak Gardens Wholesale Nursery on Jefferson Island. I find it amazing that the only casualties of the entire incident were 3 dogs. The fact that there were people fishing on the lake as the incident was happening, and there are miners below as water was rushing in, is insane. Lake Peigneur is now Louisiana's deepest lake at 200 feet deep. After the incident, the salt from the mine turned the freshwater lake to a brackish saltwater basin. The incident destroyed the freshwater species apart from that which resides at the gardens surrounding the lake. The species of fish in the lake before the incident consisted of perch, crappie, and smallmouth bass. They were then replaced with saltwater fish such as trout, redfish, and catfish. Animals like turtles, frogs, and salamanders, along with ducks that were used to the freshwater lake, either died or had to relocate. In a jarring topic change, I've ran out of topics to talk about in the lake incident, so we're going to do a complete 180, and for at least 5 minutes, do a soda tier list. The first soda on the tier list to be ranked is Starry, and I'd say it's kind of slightly worse version of Sprite, but it's not a bad soda. And the tiers go from S being the best, A, B, C, D, and then F being the worst. And I'd say Starry is probably a C tier. Next soda is Mountain Dew Voltage, and Voltage is kind of a very polarizing soda. Um, I personally like I enjoy it pretty much. I'd say it's probably an A tier. A&W root beer. Um, I think root beer is a pretty good soda, but I feel like there's room for improvement. A&W is a pretty good one, but I think I'd have to give it a B tier. Orange Crush. Orange Crush, I think, is better than Sunkissed, and it's a pretty good soda, but I feel like it's high middle. Still not the greatest. There's better fruity ones out there, and I'd give it a B tier below root beer. Code Red, another very popular Mountain Dew flavor, but I never really liked Code Red a lot. A lot of people love it, but it's really not my favorite. I think it's got to be on the lower half of the tier list. I'd say it's like a D tier. Next up, regular Mountain Dew. Regular Mountain Dew is really good. It's up there in the top contenders. Um, but I don't think it can really crack that S tier ranking. I mean, it's really good, but personally for me, I think it's just better than Voltage in the A tier. It's high A tier. Um, and then there's Pepsi. Pepsi always for me, I believe that Pepsi's kind of been Coke's little brother. I prefer the taste to Coke. I mean, Pepsi's good, but I just prefer like the taste. It's hard to describe the deeper taste of Coke. So Pepsi's still really good. I feel like I got to give it an A tier. Um, I've made the business decision to add a new tier above S called the Holy Grail. And I think for a good first S tier soda, I think is A&W cream soda. I think it's a very solid soda. Tastes really good. Good no caffeine option. I think it's better than root beer, so solid S tier. Same thing with Dr. Pepper. I'd say I'd prefer A&W's cream soda, so I might have to knock down Dr. Pepper to an A tier ranking. Um, Cherry Pepsi. Cherry Pepsi is a very good soda. I'd say that's might be a high A tier, maybe even S tier. And I say Pepsi is Coke's little brother, but some of the flavors Pepsi comes out with are really good. So I think I'll give it a high A tier. Coke has to be an S tier soda. It's better than Pepsi. It's always a solid option, easy option. Um, yeah, so S tier. Me personally, I know other people see some decent differences between root beers, but I feel like they're all pretty interchangeable. So I think Barks and Mug can go right around the A&W area. I don't personally have a favorite for them. I don't drink them enough to distinctify them as a favorite. Um, Fanta's also on here. I feel like once again, Fanta and Crush pretty interchangeable. Don't really have a favorite. Although I will say Sunkissed, I'd move down a tier. Sunkissed really isn't my favorite, but Fanta and Crush are both a solid B tier. Sunkissed is a C. Sprite, depending on how you have Sprite, it can be really good. I feel like Sprite kind of has to be an S tier, but especially like Mountain Dew Sprite, Fountain Sprite is really good. So yeah, I think I'd put Sprite above cream soda and then Coke at the top of S tier. Um, then I feel like Baja Blast has to be another S tier. Baja Blast is a great soda, especially at Taco Bell. Feel like that has to go below Coke, but above the cream soda. Um, Crushed grape. I absolutely despise certain grape flavors. Like Jolly Rancher grape is perfect. All the soda grapes are horrible. I'm putting crushed grape, Fanta grape, and Fago grape all in F tier. Same thing with Sprite cranberry. I just don't like it. I feel like it has to be an F tier. Uh, Seven Up. Seven Up is it's all right. Feel like that's a low C tier. Starry's better. Sprite's way better. Um, Ginger ale. I mean, it's all right, but who really goes out of their way to drink ginger ale? I'd say I'd give it a D tier. Mellow yellow. Once again, all just kind of way worse versions of Sprite and all that, and Mountain Dew. I'd give Mellow Yellow low C tier. Um, Sierra Mist C tier also. Uh, but for the Holy Grail, I think the soda to top all of their sodas is Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper is a perfect soda. Has that extra flavor to it. It's better than Coke. You know, it's different. It has like the good things about Coke that surpasses Pepsi, but with its own flavor that just makes it the best soda out there. Um, that was my podcast. I didn't expect to have to do a soda ranking at the end, but it's kind of hard to talk about a lake that was a pretty linear story for 20 minutes. So, and soda is just a really easy topic to talk about. It's a stupid topic. It's easy to rank things. So, yeah.